The Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs is called to order. We're in conference room 325, Tuesday, March 29th, 2022. First bill on today's agenda, SB 2059, SD1, HT1, Vice Chair.
This is relating to state symbols. First up, we have DLNR in support.
Thank you, Chima, Vice Chair Matayoshi, and on behalf of Chair Case.
You're breaking up a little bit, audio. You might want to turn off your video. It sounds like a network issue.
We're standing on our testimony and support and available for questions.
Okay, thank you. And just a reminder to the testifiers, there's a 2-minute limit on testimony out of respect for the other testifiers behind you. Next up, we have DLNR, the state Ahamoku, testifying in support.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Leimana Damate. I'm the Executive Director of the Hawaii State Ahamoku. We stand on our testimony of support and will be available to answer questions if needed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, coordinating group on alien pest species in support.
Aloha, Chair Nakashima, Vice Chair Matayoshi, and members of the committee. My name is Kylie, and I am in support of SB 2059. And I'd just like to say, this bill is not only recognizing the importance of ohia to Hawaii, but also all the people, all the hands that are working on the projects like rapid ohia death and working to save ohia and our forests. And so I've been working on a project to engage students and teachers across the state in the legislative process and having them participate. And many of them are here today to show their support for this bill. And I'm excited for you folks to be hearing from them. But it's, again, about ohia, and they're gathering here to show their support and their love for ohia and why it's so important. I'd also like to say that Ohia Lehua Day is on April 25th, and I can't think of a better way to celebrate ohia lehua with this new designation as the state endemic tree. So I appreciate your support, and mahalo for your consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Manila Elementary School in support. I'm not sure if it's the teacher or the students.
Right, we have three students.
The students, awesome.
Good afternoon, Chair Nakashima, Vice Chair Matayoshi, and members of the committee. I am Zane Nagamuri, a 5th grader here at Manila Elementary School, and I am in support of the bill to designate ohia lehua as a state endemic tree of Hawaii. The ohia is a very important species, and making it the state endemic tree will raise more awareness about rapid ohia death, ROD. Also, it helps a tremendous amount to help protect our watersheds here in Hawaii. Without the ohia, we would likely not have a local water supply. If ROD expands and we don't help, we will likely lose ohia forever. Losing ohia will negatively impact the local food chain and cause other native species to go extinct. The ohia is endemic, meaning that can only be found in Hawaii. It can be found nowhere else in the world. Having more awareness about the ohia tree and ROD just might save this important cultural and biological species. I hope that you agree that the ohia tree should be Hawaii's state endemic tree. Mahalo for your time and consideration.
Aloha, I, Teheora Pimentel, am a 5th grader at Manila Elementary School. I am in support of SB 2059, which would designate ohia lehua as the state endemic tree of Hawaii. One reason you should make ohia the state endemic tree of Hawaii is because if it were to go extinct, we would lose so many of our native animals. Native animals live in ohia and rely on ohia as a habitat and for food. If they were to die off, it would affect our food chains. Ohia is an important part of Hawaii, so help us treat it like it is. Another reason for you to make ohia Hawaii's state endemic tree is because ohia provides materials for woodworking, building, and is also very important to Hawaiian culture. The ohia is mentioned in dances, oli, and mo'olelo. Ohia is an important part of Hawaii and Hawaiian people. Let's treat it like it is. Mahalo for your time and consideration. Aloha, my name is Ethan Moskowitz, and I am a fifth grader at Manoa Elementary. I am also in support of Senate Bill 2059, which would designate Ohia Lehua as a state endemic tree of Hawaii. I think the ohia tree should be Hawaii's state endemic tree because, first of all, the ohia is vital as a water collector. It gathers fresh rainfall and stores it in our aquifers. This beautiful, delicate tree is also home to many native birds that are endangered. Lastly, ohia is useful to humans because when it grows to its full size, it provides shade and habitats as a canopy tree. They are the key part of the food system that we all take part of. If we don't have this law, we risk the ohia going unprotected and maybe extinct one day. Mahalo for your time and consideration. Mahalo.
Okay, thank you, kids. All right, next up we have a number of individuals testifying. First up, we have Drew Kohik in support.
Thank you, Representative Nakashima and the Committee of Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs. I appreciate this opportunity to testify on behalf of Bill SB 2059. I really can't say it any better than the kids over at Manila Elementary. You guys have heard some of the scientific facts and how important this tree is. So thank you guys for giving us this opportunity to testify on its behalf. And we're out here on Kauai. We've still got a lot of native ohia forests intact. And just recently, they've discovered rapid ohia death up in the Alakai Swamp. And so we're hoping that this vote to designate this the state's endemic tree, we can hopefully better advocate for its protection and secure more funding to research and protect them. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank you. Next up, we have another individual in support, Amber Mokiao Lee.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Aloha Chair Nakashima, Vice Chair Matayoshi, and members of the committee. My name is Amber Mokia Lee, and I stand in support of Senate Bill 2059, which aims to designate the Ohia Lehua tree as Hawaii's state endemic tree. This bill was brought about by the students from all across the state and will allow for more protection of this precious natural resource, especially due to the devastating disease called rapid ohia death that has killed over 1 million trees on Hawaii Island alone. I stand in support of this bill, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have regarding ohia or rapid ohia death. Mahalo for your time and support on this measure, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Peyton Fontanilla in support. Okay, not present. Next up, Jack Darby in support.
Aloha, Representative Nakashima and Representative Matayoshi and members of me. I, Jack Darby, speaking on behalf of Highlands Intermediate School, am in support of Bill 2059 regarding making Ohia Lehua the state endemic tree. I support this bill because honoring this tree as a state endemic tree will support Hawaiian culture and endangered species, mostly birds. The tree is home to endangered species of birds and has many uses such as the wood for boards, for pounding away fencing, building, and tools. The leaves can also be used for medicinal tea. On top of that, the Ohia Lehua tree is the most culturally significant tree in the Hawaiian Islands. It's also a keystone species. It is one of the first trees to grow in cooled lava in Hawaii. It is part of Hawaiians. It is named after Ohia Lehua, Ohia and Lehua, two lovers betrothed to each other but separated by the great goddess Pele. Sadly, Ohia Lehua is already suffering from rapid ohia death, or ROD. Recognized by its importance and its value it brings to Hawaii, as well as the indigenous, such as the honey creeper and other animals that call it home. If it became an endemic tree, more people would be aware of its significance. With your help, the Ohia Lehua tree can be recognized. To conclude my testimony, we ask you to make the Ohia Lehua tree the state endemic tree. Mahalo for considering my testimony.
Thank you. Next up, we have Christina Chan in support.
Aloha, my name is one second.
You're echoing it.
Aloha, my name is Christina Chan. 1 second.
Hopefully we can try it again.
Okay, aloha, my name is Christina Chan. I'm from Highlands Intermediate, and this year I've been working with my students to learn about Ohia Lehua, and I'm very proud of the work they've done. I've had many students send in you written testimony, and I stand by my students and supporting them, and the significance both culturally and biologically of this. It's just very exciting that when you see my students come in, if they've gone out on a forest trail or they've gone through their neighborhood and they see Ohia, they have to bring back a picture and say, look, I found Ohia today. They just love the tree. And I just wanted to say we're in support of it. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Members, that's all the testifiers we have today. I just want to note we have 164 testifiers in support, none in opposition, and none with comments. Members, any questions? Yep, report.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't catch your name, but it was the one who said, if you want to know anything about rapid Ohio death. Do you remember? It was a second or third testifier.
I am not sure.
Yes, hi.
There she is. There she is.
Hi, Rep. Ward.
You are the expert. It said 1 million have died on the Big Island.
On the Big Island alone, correct.
Out of how many is the first question?
So far it has affected rapid Ohia that has affected about 20% of the land mass of the total Ohia trees. So we can't really foresee how many trees we have out there because there's so many from keikis to adults. But so far ROD has affected about 20% of the total forest on Hawaii Island alone.
1/5. That's a considerable loss. The other question that follows is, I think not only rapid Ohio death, but also, and this is my Hawaii Kai mountainous area around the Hahione Valley. There is a aggressive yellow flowered, and I don't know the name of the tree. They call it kind of a rubbish tree. It just grows so fast and it pushes the Ohio out, strangles them basically. Are you aware that that is as much rapidly, it is pushed out basically a whole side of a mountain behind my house?
Yes, I've heard of it. I don't know the name of it either off the top of my head, but our crews are aware of it. And I also have online some DLNR staff here that might be able to attest to the name of it and what's been happening. But Ohia has many different diseases and pests and other trees that have been affecting it. So it's not only rapid Ohia death that's been killing these trees, but there's many different things that affects Ohia. And so hopefully by passing of this bill, will not only raise awareness about this tree, but help to add more protection for the tree for other invasive species that are attacking it, or pests or pathogens that have been attacking it as well.
My last question is an opinion question. On line 6 of the bill on page 4, it gives, other than saying that this shall be the endemic tree, it says to be effective as so long as the legislature of the state does not otherwise provide. Does that sound a little bit fungible, or like we're not really sure we want to do this? Do we really need that language in there designated?
We would like to see it in perpetuity, but I believe the last committee on Arts and International Affairs mentioned a date of 2044. I believe it was 2044 that the bill would be good till. So we would like to see it last as long as possible, but yeah, I'm not sure if we really need that language in there.
Yeah, that's sort of fudging. Okay, thank you very much for your testimony.
You're welcome. Thank you, Rep. Ward.
Members, any other questions on this measure? If seeing none, let's move on to SB 2202 HD1 relating to Volunteer Month. We've got one testifier here today, Kanu Hawaii, in support.
Aloha kako. My name is Keone Kealoha. I'm with Kanu Hawaii. I appreciate your time, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. We'd like to recognize April is Volunteer Month in the state of Hawaii. Nationally, it's been recognized since 1991 under President Bush. We feel that this would give us a broad scale opportunity to better engage residents and visitors in Hawaii around service opportunities with the thousands of nonprofits and community organizations that are here. Volunteers are a core essential element of any nonprofit and their ability to serve their missions in our communities to better Hawaii for its people and its visitors. So we hope that you'll consider this something for passage and adoption so that we could, again, just have more support and buy-in at the institutional level from our government and our representatives so that the community members can be more supported in taking action on the ground. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. That's all the people we have scheduled to testify. Is there anyone else here to testify in person or on Zoom? Okay, if not, members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to SB 2163 relating to negligent homicide. First off, we have the public defenders in opposition.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. The Office of the Public Defender opposes SB 2163. And, we only oppose this bill because it creates a mandatory 20-year sentence for any and all persons who violate subsection 1A of the law and satisfy those conditions laid out. And it creates a mandatory 20-year prison term regardless of whether strong mitigating circumstances exist. Now, we recognize strong mitigating circumstances are going to be extremely rare in traffic fatality cases involving alcohol or drugs. And in most cases, a probation term is not going to be acceptable and long-term prison is going to be warranted. We're just asking that an exception be carved out to allow the judge to have discretion if and when those strong mitigating circumstances show themselves. Just off the top of my head, I tried to think of a few examples of what could constitute strong mitigating circumstances in a traffic fatality case, a negligent homicide case. And I could think of maybe an elderly defendant driver who may have had an older OVUI conviction. Maybe we don't want to send a 92-year-old person to prison for 20 years. Another example I could think of is maybe someone who, by the time sentencing comes around, is suffering from a terminal disease. And again, maybe that might not be a good candidate for prison. And my last example was maybe an 18-year-old driver who blew a 0.15 or had a BAC of 0.15. And maybe he crashed his car and the passenger died and they were related or part of the same family. And in that case, the family may not want the driver to go away to prison for 20 years as well. And the problem with this bill is it's absolutely would preclude a judge from fashioning an appropriate sentence when strong mitigating circumstances exist. We do have manslaughter. Again, manslaughter is a Class A felony punishable by 20 years in prison. It's for manslaughter covers reckless conduct, and manslaughter is probationable. All we ask is that negligent homicide, because it constitutes negligent conduct, it would only make sense that negligent homicide also be probationable. So, based on those reasons, we oppose this bill. And thank you for the opportunity to present testimony, and I'm available for questions if any. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Department of Transportation in support with comments.
Chair Nakashima, Vice Chair Matayoshi, members of the committee, the DOT is in support of the measure, and we would like to stand on our written testimony. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Honolulu prosecutors in support.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Mark Tom for the department. Department is in support of this bill with comments. Specifically, the department always will lean towards more clarity than less. And I believe that that's what the Maui prosecutors' amendments in their testimony aims to address. Specifically, what we'll point out to is for 707, 702, 3B, one of the amendments. I believe the intent of that section by the introducer is to address an individual that's operating a motor vehicle while their license is suspended, which is a violation of HRS 291E62. And so what I think Maui's bill amendments are trying to do is just say what they intend for it to do. This could be this section without some clarity could be utilized differently. I'm not really sure how, but at some point that could become a problem. So if it is aimed to address 291E62, I think the amendments are aimed to just address that. The second is on prior convictions. They aim to place that section into the 707, 702. And I believe the reason for that is because that same section is found as prior convictions in 291E61. And if for some reason 291E61 prior convictions is amended at some point, and it then will have an effect on this section without intentionally trying to change prior convictions, it will at least allow the legislature not to accidentally affect this section when amending 291E61. We'll be here for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Maui prosecutors in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Gerald Enriquez. I'm here to testify in strong support on behalf of the Maui Prosecutor's Office. I believe the Oahu prosecutors have kind of gone through the requested amendments that we've proposed. Mainly, we're requesting they be put in for clarity's sake and for consistency's sake as well. So again, we're here in strong support and we are available for questions if you like.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have HPD in support.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Captain Andre Peters, on behalf of the Honolulu Police Department, we stand by our written testimony and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And that's all the testifiers we have registered for this measure. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Okay, seeing none. Members, any questions? Yeah, Rep. Nakamura.
The prosecutor, please. Honolulu prosecutor, please.
I'll always try to pass it on, but okay, I'm here.
Since you're here in person.
No problem, no problem.
The public defender said that there should be some discretion given to the judge based on strong mitigating circumstances. I'm just wondering your take on that.
You know, I would have to check with administration, but at least in terms of that concern, I believe what the PD was mentioning, yet say the family is saying, we don't really want this person to be in for 20 years. That will always be something that our office will take in consideration. Some of the things that could be done is that it could be pled down or the enhancement could be maybe not imposed in that charge. I know that in their testimony, they did mention about manslaughter. However, I would note to the committee that manslaughter does not have a lesser included offense. So when we do charge manslaughter and we go to trial on manslaughter, if the jury does not find a manslaughter, the lesser included is a very low type of offense as opposed to negligent homicide. That answers your question.
So you feel there are other ways that it can be addressed?
Yes, I believe there is other ways. And I understand where the PDs is coming from in just having the court have some discretion. But you know, at least standing here without speaking with administration, I believe there are safeguards in place, at least from our office, in taking input and insight from the victims in these cases, which are the most important thing in the case of negligent homicide when it's an OVUI death. So we will take those things into consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Rep. Calvi.
Hold on. Just quick. So you're saying that in the case the public defender gave of the 92-year-old with the older conviction on the books, your office would be able to take that into account insofar as the example that they gave, the first example of the, where a 20-year sentence may not be warranted?
I think our office, then the prosecutors, I'd like to believe that when we discuss these cases in terms of, say, a plea negotiation, those things are addressed. I believe the PDs will bring that to the attention and make a case, and the office will take into consideration all the factors in that specific case on a case-by-case basis and make a determination on the charges after also speaking with the victims.
Okay, thank you very much. Could I, with the committee's indulgence, could I ask the PD to respond to the answer that the prosecutor's office gave?
Sure. Mr. Tom is correct. The only problem I have with that is we have to go through the prosecutor's office. And, some places are not as clear cut where everybody in the family might not want a long sentence. And, if the prosecutor says no for whatever reason, and it's within their right, then we're stuck. And so is the judge. At least this way, if the judge has discretion, there's more than one avenue to maybe try and work out a plea deal. But if the prosecutor's office declines it, which is totally within their right, then like I said, the judge is stuck, we're stuck. And these are the kind of cases that probably, would have to go to trial and probably shouldn't go to trial. So that's my position. And it just makes logical sense is if you can get probation for manslaughter, which is reckless, which involves reckless conduct, negligent conduct is below that. It would only make logical sense to me under the law that you should be able to get probation, or at least be eligible to get probation for a negligent act if you can get probation for manslaughter, which is a higher state of mind. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you, Vice Chair.
Mark, I got one more question for you. So I understand that there are safeguards in place, and I know you can only speak for Honolulu Prosecutor's Office, but you guys okay with just giving judges discretion, especially on minimum sentencing in this situation?
I think to add to Rep. McKelvey's question on we also are concerned sometimes at some point, every judge, just for consistency purposes, one judge might determine no enhancement, one judge might be a little stronger on the defendant and determine an enhancement is necessary. So, for these purposes, I think our department, I can't speak again, as you mentioned, for the other departments, but just for consistency sake, as well as looking at it as a case by case, I think allowing for the prosecutors to determine after speaking with victims, is this something that we, on that case, should be going with the enhancement on a Class A, or is it something that should be still with a Class B?
But wouldn't you agree? I mean, we've got all these different prosecutors' offices, we've got all these different prosecutors working in those offices. If you're worried about judges being subjective judge to judge, wouldn't the same argument apply to different prosecutors' office or different prosecutors working the case?
Yes, it would.
Okay.
And I think for us, when we're thinking about the case, we're thinking also about the victim. So we have the closest relationship when we're working with the victim and understanding how that affects them. So I think, at least for our office's purposes, understanding that and determining on how to move forward with these charges puts us in the best place to move forward with what type of sentencing.
Thank you. Members, any other questions?
Chair.
Oh, yeah,
Chair.
Representative Presti.
Thanks. For the prosecutor's office, why the 20 years? That seems like an extraordinarily long time to hold that over someone's head, even though they did something wrong like that. Is there consideration of, I mean, I could see 10 years if somebody did that in 10 years, but.
So for this one, thank you for the question, Rep. For this was actually by the introducer. I don't believe that we requested the 20. I would note that, as you mentioned, on habitual OVUIs, there is a 10-year look back period. In searching through other charges, I believe there is in repeat offender and sex offender statute in 706, 606.6, 2A, there is a 20-year look back period. And those types of offenses on repeat is, I think it looks back for murder to manslaughter, sex trafficking, sex assault type cases. So that's the only area that I saw, and there might be more, but at least when I'm looking back, that has at least a 20-year look back period. Those are the charges that we're looking at. That's the situation that they have. But in terms of OVUII type offenses, I believe for habitual OVUII, it is a 10-year look back.
Yeah, it is 10, I think. And I think I'd be okay with that. I think 20 is too much. Also, I personally feel manslaughter seems to cover this adequately, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, let's move on. SB 2780 relating to the power of arrest. First up, AG's office in support.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair and Chair Nakashima. Lance Goto with the Department of the Attorney General. We do support this bill, and request its passage. And we just note that this is the same bill as the House Companion HB 1584, which this committee passed last month. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, DOT in support.
Yes, Vice Chair Matayoshi, Chair Nakashima, members of the committee, the DOT is in support of the measure. We would like to stand on our written testimony, but I would like to share with the committee that I was a CBP officer for 3 or 4 years, and I was a USCIS officer for about a dozen years. And what isn't really mentioned in the bill is even though the USCIS folks are the smart ones, generally they have not been trained in law enforcement. They never had a gun. They never had, that kind of stuff. But I just wanted to share that with you, and we are in support of the bill. Thank you very much. I can answer any questions you might have. Mahalo.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Homeland Security Investigations in support.
Good afternoon, Chair and Co-Chair. John Tobon, Special Agent in Charge for Homeland Security Investigations. I stand on my written testimony. I also would like to clarify that the need for this type of authority really is to support the law enforcement in Hawaii in crimes such as child exploitation, human trafficking, money laundering, the issues that we have with illegal game rooms, as well as illicit massage businesses around the islands. This is to help us focus on complex transnational crime syndicates, which only federal authorities and federal resources can be, where federal resources can be used to impact these organizations, which threaten the everyday life of all citizens of the state of Hawaii. And I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. Next up, HPD in support.
Hi, my name is Tate Nojima, Captain of the Narcotics Vice Division. We stand and support this bill, and I stand on my written testimony. But I am available for any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you. Next up, Hawaii Coalition for Immigrant Rights with comments.
Aloha, Chair and Vice Chair, members of the committee, Liza Ryan Gill with Hawaii Coalition for Immigrant Rights. We just offered comments in some alternative language. We're a little bit concerned about the breadth of this power of arrest. It is often the case that our immigrant community has a difficult time developing trust with local law enforcement. And we just want to make sure that there's a clear, bright line so that they know that if they are seeking help or even coming forward as a victim in one of these instances, that they can trust that they are not, if they do not have status, that they're not going to be handed over to Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. We appreciate the need for more reinforcements, especially with our unique geography. We just offer some alternative language and caution just to make sure that it's very clear what the boundaries of this power of arrest are. Mahalo.
Okay, thank you. And last up, we've got ACLU of Hawaii in opposition. Okay, anyone else here to testify on this measure? If not, members, any questions? Yep, Rep. Chiyama.
Thank you. For Homeland Security.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much for being here this afternoon. Some of the testimony that we received raised concerns about ICE's operations in regards to immigration. And I think there might be some confusion about what Homeland Security Investigations does versus the other branches of ICE. Could you help us understand the difference?
Yes, I can. So Immigration and Customs Enforcement has multiple components. One of those components is enforcement and removal operations. And these are the individuals that operate all the immigration jails. Their main focus is civil immigration enforcement. Homeland Security Investigations is a complete separate component which focuses on transnational crime. As the head of Homeland Security Investigations here, all of my personnel answer to me, and all of the enforcement and removal operations have a complete separate chain of command. And that complete separate chain of command extends all the way up to our headquarters in Washington, D.C. This bill specifically carves out the power of arrest authority for members of HSI, for special agents that answer to the special agent in charge. In other words, myself or whoever sits in my chair in the future. It does not provide that authority to anybody involved in civil immigration activities.
So just to confirm what you just said, this bill would only apply to Homeland Security and not to the enforcement removal operations.
Correct. It would apply to HSI, to Homeland Security Investigations, the criminal enforcement component, and not to enforcement and removal operations, which is the civil immigration component of the agency.
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you, Vice Chair.
Okay, members, any other questions? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to SB 2869 ST1 HD1 relating to spousal support. Members, we don't have anyone here signed up to testify. Is there anyone here to testify on this measure? Okay, if not, we'll move on to SB 3038 relating to Information Privacy and Security Council. Probably should be a "the" in there somewhere. We've got one testifier today, Office of Enterprise Technology Services in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Vincent Huang, Chief Information Security Officer from the Office of Enterprise Technology Services. On behalf of the office, we stand on the written testimony in support and will be available for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here to testify in this measure? If not, members, any questions? If seeing none, we'll move on to SB 2002 ST2 HD1 relating to fair housing, reasonable accommodations. We've got one testifier here today, Hawaii Civil Rights Commission in support.
Chair, Vice Chair, my name is Robin Wurtzel. I'm testifying in support of the Hawaii Civil Rights Commission. We stand on our written testimony in support of the measure. If there are any questions, we're available.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here to testify in this measure? If not, members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to SB 2118 SD1 HD1 relating to traffic violations. First up, we have Department of Transportation in support.
Vice Chair Matayoshi, Chair Nakashima, members of the committee, the DOT is in support of the measure, and we would like to stand on our written testimony. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have HPD in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I am Captain Braden Ogata of the Honolulu Police Department, and I will stand on my written testimony in support and be available to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, and that's all the testifiers we have signed up. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? If not, members, any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to SB 2008 SD1 HD1 relating to highways. First up, Department of Transportation in support.
Vice Chair Matayoshi, Chair Nakashima, members of the committee, the DOT is in support of the measure, and in the interest of time, we would like to stand on our testimony. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Next up, Hawaii Association for Justice in support.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Evan Oy on behalf of the Hawaii Association for Justice. We stand in support of this measure and will be available for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Seeing none, members, any questions? Okay, let's move on to SB 2065 ST2 HD1 relating to fishing. First up, we have the DLNR Ahamoku in support.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of the Hawaii State Ahamoku, my name is Leimana Damati. I'm the Executive Director, and we stand in strong support of this measure. Our main concern from the people were that unmanned drones would be able to pinpoint traditional gathering, fishing spots, and coastal areas without any kind of supervision or any kind of, any way of controlling that. So we stand in support of this measure. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have DLNR in support.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Brian Nielsen representing DLNR on this measure. We stand on our written testimony in support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? If not, members, any questions?
I have a question
Yep,
for
Nakamura.
DLNR, please.
Yes, thank you.
One of the letters of opposition stated that this would be very difficult to enforce. How do you propose to enforce this measure?
Yeah, I can see the concern, fishing regulations are always challenging to enforce just due to remoteness and just the sheer number of shoreline miles that our officers, are responsible for patrolling. But I think with this law, 99% of people are going to follow it because it's the law. It's just that 1% of potential rule breakers where officers would need to actually, see somebody in the act of using a drone to carry the line out, which, I've seen that before. So if this law could at least cut down on that type of activity, I think it would make a major difference.
You might need a drone to enforce the drone.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Protect them in the act.
Drone with a BB gun.
Thank you.
Rep. Lowen, did you have a question?
Oh, I guess I'll ask this question. I always feel like I ask the same question over and over on this kind of thing, but the idea is that there would be a deterrent effect, even if you're unable to enforce in every instance, there would be a deterrent effect to passing a law in the first place. Is that your experience?
Yes, Representative Lowen, that's my experience. As a kid, I was always told, not to break the rules because I might get, ticketed, even though I never saw a single enforcement officer, as a kid, patrolling, but it's just something that gets passed down, that you follow the law. And I think that works for most people. It's just those few bad apples that, want to break the law, or, it's up to us to make sure we educate folks as well so they're aware of the laws. But I think it would make a strong deterrent.
Thank you.
Rep. McKelvey.
Yeah, DLNR, again, since you're on the horn. This, they're using the drones to place the lines offshore, right? As opposed to like slide baiting or manually paddling it out. I mean, why is this so egregious compared to the other methods of placing lines offshore, particularly when in some areas, especially cliff areas, it can be very dangerous to do it manually? I mean, what's the big harm insofar as this mechanism of delivery as opposed to the traditional ones and other ones?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the level of harm is, 100, maybe 100 feet of line going out that's physically casted versus, like 1,000 feet of line that goes out. And so, we're getting calls from surfers, getting hooked, or swimmers, running into line in areas that traditionally somebody just physically casting could never reach those levels, but now they're reaching these new areas. So it's a big user conflict issue that the drones have created.
I don't mean by casting. I mean, by right now, for instance, one of the ways to place it is to, like with a surfboard, you paddle out and drop the line manually. You know what I'm saying? You're still offshore putting the line. You're still putting out distances of line. It's just you're using a drone to do it instead of manually doing it, which presents dangers, obviously, to the fishermen. So I guess that's my question. If we were to be consistent, we would ban all offshore placement of lines completely, despite no matter what the mechanism of delivery is. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it's just the scale of people fishing with drones versus, swimming their bait out with a surfboard or physically swimming. It's just the sheer scale of the amount of drone use is really, what has, caused a bunch of people calling into our office over the last couple of years.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you, Vice Chair.
Members, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to SB 3377 SD1 HD1 relating to commercial activities on beaches. First up, DLNR in support.
Thank you. Todd Tashima for DLNR. We stand on our testimony in support.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? If not, members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to the last measure, our fun one. SB 872 SD1 relating to the Commission on Water Resource Management. First up, we have DLNR in opposition.
Thank you. Vice Chair Matayoshi, and members of the committee, Suzanne Case for the Department of Land and Natural Resources. We do respectfully oppose this measure. We actually have been working very hard the last, certainly the last few years, to make sure that we process and consult with DHHL as required by law for the DHHL water reservations, and we've made tremendous progress there. So I think maybe this bill has some history to it, but I do think we're really on a good track with DHHL reservations. So I don't really think it's a necessary bill, and you know, there are potential issues with it. You know, the possibility that on a DHHL water reservation there would be a conflict of interest, or at least the appearance of a conflict of interest. There is a challenge with having more members of the commission. That right now it's a 7-member commission and working really well. And also, if you add one, there's a potential for non-action with tie votes. And I will say, just point out that in terms of broader representation of Native Hawaiian interests, there is a designated slot already on the Water Commission for a person to represent the interests of Native Hawaiians. So those are the reasons for our position on this, and but we do it with all respect to DHHL and certainly to my counterpart at DHHL. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have DLNR Seaworm.
That's the same.
Same one. I've got a bunch of DLNR here. Ahamoku.
Thank you, Chair, and Chair Nakashima, for giving me the opportunity to speak on this bill. My name is Leimana Damate. I'm the Executive Director for the Hawaii State Ahamoku. This is a really hard, difficult testimony for us, because Ahamoku does not ever want to testify against other Hawaiians. We speak in opposition on this bill. And that is because, and the reason it's hard for me too is that in 2014, as the Hawaiian Homes Commissioner, I worked on the Hawaiian Homes water policy. And so that was to benefit all beneficiaries. But I've been getting calls since the last testimonies that we did from Hawaii Island, Kauai, and Maui, from Hawaiians who are not beneficiaries. And we've come to the conclusion that there are more Hawaiians who are not on the Hawaiian Homes waiting list or a beneficiary. And their concerns are, what about us? If there is a Hawaiian Homes Department chairperson, and this is respectfully said because we have a lot of respect for Mr. Ayla and for that position. But if there is that seat on a board that already works very well, how are we going to know, will they be qualified to make decisions for Hawaiians who are not beneficiaries? And it's because of that, I had to reluctantly come up and say, Ahamoku opposes this bill, this measure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, DLNR, I'm sorry, I don't know why it's DLNR here. DHHL in support.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Matayoshi, Chair Nakashima, and the rest of the committee. First of all, I want to say that we strongly support this bill. And then secondly, I do want to acknowledge the Chair of the Department of Land and Natural Resources and compliment her on the increased water reservation discussion that we've had and the results we've had at Seaworm. But the request to have a seat on the Water Commission goes beyond that. It comes at the request of our beneficiaries who have a much broader view of water, the role of the Water Commission, and how water is balanced via the state constitution as well as the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act. So I do want to acknowledge that we've made great progress. However, the concept of water and the kuleana for water is something that we feel that we strongly need to have a place at the table, even beyond our own needs. And I would just point out that, you know, there are many folks that sit on the commission that have inherent conflicts. For example, you know, there are many ex-plantation managers, there are many boards of water supply employees, there are many others. And the challenge for all of us is really, how do we balance the needs of everyone in Hawaii's responsibility to manage water, and just advocating for our reserves is simply not enough for our beneficiaries and those other Native Hawaiians who advocate for traditional and customary practices. And I'll just point out that the Hawaii Supreme Court has made it clear within the context of water, the entire commission has a responsibility to respect and protect Native Hawaiian rights, including those of DHHL, and to carry out the state's public trust duties to everyone. So with that, I will stand ready to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. We have one more testifier today, the Aho Nui Homestead Association in support.
Aloha. My name is Cora Schnackenberg. I represent Aho Nui Homestead Association. I am from the island of Molokai. I'm so sorry. Mahalo, Chair and Vice Chair, and also committee members. I strongly support this bill, SB 872 SDI. I feel that our beneficiary have gotten the short end of the stick all these years. I wanted to remind that the purpose of the seaworm, also known as Commission Water Resource Management, the purpose resulted in the Supreme Court ruling. And if we had had someone from DHL sitting, they would have been able to they would be able to address instead of having it gone to a higher level of court system. But nevertheless, I do want to say that Molokai's water is totally being diverted from the east to the west. And unless someone that knows all these intricate, the details of each ahapua'as, they would be able to explain to the board of the commissioners, the seaworm. So they would be able to bring clarity. They'll be able to shed some light as to what is the issue and concerns for all these beneficiaries or homesteaders. So I am very passionate. I feel that the HHL chair or the designee should be sitting on the board. And I stand on my written testimony. Mahalo.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to testify on this measure? Okay, seeing none, members, any questions? Nakamura.
I have a question for Chair Ayla.
Yes, Representative Nakamura.
Hi, thank you for your testimony. In Suzanne Case's testimony, she raised the concern of a potential conflict of interest when DHHL awards go before the Water Commission. Could you please respond to that?
I think in most cases, if it's a direct instance of a water reservation, I'm fairly sure that a future chairman or the chairman's designee would review the opportunity to recuse themselves. It's the same opportunity that's provided to the Department of Health with regards to any issues that come before the Water Commission relative to their duties when it is in opposition to their responsibilities. There's a difference there. The responsibility is to for the Department of Health to make sure that the water is safe, but also their seat is supposed to be working towards the overall sort of constitutional mandate that the Water Commission has. So members of the commission always have a potential for conflict, and then I think the individual makes that decision whether they think that they should recuse themselves or not. And you have an attorney at the table representing the Water Commission who can also opine on whether or not they feel that the individual board member should recuse themselves or not. I don't think there'd be a conflict in the majority of the cases.
Thank you.
You have a follow-up,
And also, in light of the potential $600 million that DHHL will be receiving, do you feel that spending time on this commission or designating someone on this commission is going to help in this task that you will have to spend down these funds in a strategic way?
Most of the decision on water allocation is done at the county level. So we would work with the county to ensure that there would be water credits available for any development that occurs as a result of the potential $600 million coming our way. So I don't see any conflict at the CWRM level.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Okay, I've got a couple. First for DLNR. The DHHL brought up a conflict of interest point in their testimony. Can you tell me how many DLNR projects actually or issues actually come before CWRM?
So really, we're just talking about CWRM right now because the land board is separate from this. And so, I mean, the Water Commission meetings generally have 3, 4, 5 matters on the agendas, which are once a month. If you want more detail at the staff.
How many would you consider? I guess my question is, how often does DLNR have a potential conflict with matters before the commission?
DLNR or the Water Commission?
Oh, I'm sorry,
DHHL.
No, I thought it was, I thought their point was that DLNR also had a conflict in their testimony.
DHHL conflict.
DHHL certainly does, I think, would, but I thought the, right. Okay. Never mind. I'll ask you on the side maybe later. For DHHL, I noticed a number of issues that you brought up in your testimony. I'm wondering whether, and I have spoken to your office on the side as well on this issue. I'm wondering whether a lot of these issues might be addressed if you had a non-voting member or non-voting seat instead of a voting seat, and whether you can address that.
You know, the other state agencies have a voting seat, so I would be opposed to having a non-voting seat. It seems to relegate DHHL, which is a state agency, to a sort of second citizen class. I do feel that we can bring good discussion to the table at CWRM, because we're not only talking about water reservations, and there really is no conflict with regards to water reservations, because it's very clear from the Constitution, it's very clear from the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act that as long as the department can provide good data to indicate what its current and foreseeable water uses are, the Constitution is pretty clear. We're supposed to receive that reservation. So I don't see very many instances of there being a direct conflict with the Department of Hawaiian Homelands and issues that come before the Water Commission, because I see our role there as more of an advocate for balance and an advocate for watching out for traditional and customary practices, which a large portion.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, which I was going to say, all of our beneficiaries are constitutionally protected by Article 12, Section 7.
But wouldn't you also be able to advocate for your issues as a non-voting member as well? And I guess from your testimony just now, are you saying that you either want a voting member seat or nothing at all?
I was saying, my response to you, Vice Chair, was it seems funny that we're being asked this question and being relegated to sort of a secondary citizenship. I mean, we should be seen as an asset and not a liability.
I really hesitate to put it that way. And this is the second time you've kind of described it as that. I mean, DHHL has no seat right now, and many other departments have no seat on this commission. I mean, you're asking for this seat because you want influence in this process, and your office in prior discussions has pointed out that so there are certain situations in the past where you felt that private developers were getting an advantage over DHHL, which would be a problem, I think. So with this non-voting seat, would you then have the oversight and the influence over the board to at least investigate or point out when this is happening and make that and try to bring it to the attention of the board or the commission rather?
The answer to your question is yes, but it would not be as effective, I believe. So, and it is the legislature's prerogative to decide what the language of the bill is.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, let's recess for decision making.
Okay, Committee on Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs call to order. Tuesday, March 29, 2022, conference room 325. We are convened for decision making. Members on Senate Bill 2059, SD1, HD1 related state symbols. Chair's recommendation is that remove the language making this a removing the language regarding the legislature that this bill will stay in effect as long as the legislature doesn't take any other action. And so I'd like to remove that provision from the bill. Members, any questions or comments?
Sure.
Representative Ward.
Thank you for doing that. It shows we're serious about making this tree the endemic tree rather than, well, we want to damn it with faint praise by saying, yeah, we'll give it to you, but we're going to take it back. So what you've done is actually make it now real rather than kind of a pseudo false flattering venue. Thank you.
Chair.
Members, any other questions or
Chair.
comments?
Chair, over here.
Representative
No, thank you
McKelvey.
for making that amendment because, you know, the future legislatures can't be bound by the action of this legislature. So it seemed kind of odd to put that in there. So thanks for taking it out.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair as amended.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 2059 SD1 HD1 with amendments noting the previous. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Rep. Ichiyama. Rep. Kobayashi.
Aye.
Rep. Lopresti.
Aye.
Rep. Lowen. Rep. McKelvey.
Aye.
Rep. Nakamura.
Aye.
Rep. Takumi.
Aye.
Rep. Tokioka.
Aye.
Rep. Ward.
Aye.
Okay, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Members, Senate Bill 2202, House Draft 1, relating to volunteer month. Chair's recommendations to pass this out as is. Members, questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair unamended.
Okay, Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 2202 HD1 as is, in the presence of all members. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. SB 2163, relating to negligent homicide. Some technical notes on page 3, line 2, the words of an intoxicant should be inserted after influence to reflect the OVUII offense under section 291E-61. Also, since section 3A deals with individuals who commit multiple OUI offenses, oh, I'm sorry. No, we're not going to do that. Okay. My apologies. Also, I'd like to incorporate the Maui and Honolulu prosecutors' proposed amendments. Make the offense look back, change it from 20 years to 10 years, and include the judicial discretion when there are strong mitigating circumstances. Vice Chair.
One more thing. And then one more thing, we're going to be adding clarifying language for conviction, just to make it clear that convictions that are overturned later on appeal or similarly are not counted towards this negligent homicide under the statute.
Okay. Members, any questions or comments?
Chair.
Representative McKelvey.
Thank you so much for those amendments. I was going to go WR with concerns that I think your amendments help to alleviate. So thank you again for making the amendments.
Okay. Representative Kobayashi.
Yeah, I still share concerns with the public defender regarding the mandatory sentence guidelines, potentially not taking into account mitigating circumstances in certain cases. I'm a no vote on this.
Okay, thank you.
Chair. Chair.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on, man. Hold on.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you for the changes. I was also going to go WR, but I'm okay with it. Now I appreciate those changes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair, as amended.
The chair's recommendation is to pass SB 2163 with amendments noting the presence of all members. And Rep. Kobayashi, was that a no vote for you or a WR?
I'm a no.
No vote. Okay, noting the no vote of Representative Kobayashi. Any other no's or reservations? Reservations for Rep. Tokioka. Any other no's or reservations? Okay, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. Senate Bill 2780 relating to power of arrest. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as is. Members, any questions or comments?
Sure.
Representative Kobayashi.
In opposition, given the sordid history of ICE, I don't believe it's in our best interest to be granting them greater authority to do arrests. I'm a no on this.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, as is.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 2780 as is, noting the no vote of Representative Kobayashi. Any other members voting no or with reservations?
No.
No for Representative Tokioka. Any other no's or reservations? Reservations for Rep. Takumi. Any other no's or reservations? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. Senate Bill 2869, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1, relate to spousal support. Chair's recommendations to defer this matter. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, I misspoke. On this bill, we are going to include technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair as amended.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 2869, SD1, HD1 with amendments noting the presence of all members. Any members voting no or reservations? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. SB 3038 relating to Information Privacy and Security Council. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as is. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, unamended.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 3038 as is, noting the presence of all members. Any members voting no or reservations? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. Senate Bill 2002, SD2, HD1 related to fair housing reasonable accommodations. Some technical notes: the comma after the word sex on page 4 should not be underlined since it is already in statute. Other technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair as amended.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 2002, SD2, HD1 with amendments noting the presence of all members. Any members voting with reservations or no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. SB 2118, SD1, HD1 related to traffic violations. Chair's recommendation is that we further defect date this January 1st, 2022. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair as amended.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 2118, SD1, HD1 with amendments noting the presence of all members. Any members voting with reservations or no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. SB 2008, SD1, HD1 related to highways. Several technical amendments. On page 3, line 13, the word lane should be added to the existing statutory language for consistency. On page 6, lines 13 to 17, the intention is not to hold the state or county liable. If the intention is not to allow the states and county to be held jointly and severally liable for acts of omissions that occur after the condemnation. We will change the wording accordingly. On page 7, line 4, the inclusion of trails will not be included for the purpose of this subsection. And other technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair as amended.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 2008, SD1, HD1 with amendments noting the presence of all members. Any members voting with reservations or no? The recommendation is adopted.
SB 2065, SD2, HD1 related to fishing. On page 1, line 15, the word subsection should be changed to section. Representative Tokyo, do you have comments on this?
Yes, Chair, thank you. In reading the bill, the concern that I have is that the process for getting the permit is not established on how much it's going to cost, how they would get the permits. And we all know that Aclu fishermen use airplanes to spot fishes and schools of fish. They have been using this technology to help them save costs, so that would be a cost savings to the people who buy Aclu in the stores. So I have a concern about that. I've not, as somebody who's around a lot of fishermen, I've not heard the issue of people using drones. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but on the shoreline, I haven't heard that as much from the local fishermen. And so I have those concerns, but I appreciate if we can put in the committee report the process for the permits, and are we going to establish the cost, or is DLNR going to establish the cost? So those are my comments.
Okay, so that we will include in the committee report language to effectuate Representative Tokyoka's concerns regarding the Aclu fishermen and the creation of the permit process. Representative McKelvey.
Thank you so much, Chair. I share Representative Tokyoka's concerns, but in our area, particularly in East Maui, where we have a lot of cliff fishing, fishermen have to get the lines out far, and they paddle them out, as I talked about in the testimony, and drones provide a safe way. I don't see the difference in the transportation mechanism insofar as lines being put out and concerns of that. So because of that, I'm going to be, I guess, echoing the concerns of my good friend, the Senator of Puna, and going with reservations on that.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, any other questions or comments? Representative Ward.
Is the punitive thing for the small guys who don't have much money and only have a drone versus the big boys who've got planes who can go and spy out their fish? Question mark. I mean, are we telling the big boys, you guys can go and do all your aerial surveillance, but you small guys who only got drones and not Piper Cubs can't do it?
I think the concern was mostly at the nearshore waters. I think Representative McKelvey's point is, something of concern, but I don't think that the use. So what we're trying to do is exclude the use of drones out in the open ocean.
I missed Representative McKelvey's point. Could you repeat it?
So he had concern about cliff fishing on Maui, and so that's in that case he thought that the drones were appropriate.
So, which I'm saying they're appropriate if we allow the big guys to do it without punitive remarks. Why are we?
Well, there are no airplanes used, I think, on the cliff.
Airplanes for near shore.
But in the long, because most of the fish are beyond near shore.
Yeah, Representative Tokyoka's concern is for the Aclu offshore fishing. My concern is insofar as just placing the lines offshore, which you need to do, especially in cliff areas. It's a safer way to do it than the way of paddling it out, which is often done now. And the concern is yards of line being put offshore. Then why is a drone any different? You should ban it across the board, which is what DLNR's concern was.
How far can you have a drone go out before you lose control over it?
Depends on the make and model of the drone, so far as the range goes.
So
okay, I think we're going kind of beyond the subject.
Yeah, this is a boat.
Yeah, so Gene, I'm sorry, report. It's not about the big guys or the small guys, because the big guys are the guys that are using the drones now. Because it's way cheaper to do a drone to spot Aclu than it is to put a plane up and spot Aclu. So that's the technology that they're using now. as well as the birds and everything else. But, they're using this drone technology to make it more affordable for them, because to put a pilot up in the sky, the gas and everything else is not cheap.
So the small guys aren't using it. And I haven't talked to my fishermen yet, but they put my feet to the fire on this issue.
I don't think the small guys were using airplanes in the first place.
Well, I mean, drones now that.
Oh, now they can use drones.
Okay, I think we've kind of exhausted the issue here. Okay.
Chair.
As amended.
Oh.
Yes, Representative Presley.
Thanks, my turn. I also share the reservations. It seems to me, I'm trying to think of an analogy. It's not a perfect one, but it seems like banning binoculars for hunters. I mean, with new technology, if it can save money and make it more efficient and safer for the person doing it, I think it's not a bad thing. And until it's proven to really be a bad thing, then perhaps we should start legislating it. Drones are still a relatively new technology. They're being used in new and innovative ways. And for now, I'd like to be reservations on it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, any other questions or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair as amended.
Chair's recommendation is pass SB 2065 ST2 HD1 with amendments noting the reservations of Representatives McKelvey and Lopresti. Did I miss anyone for reservations?
Myself.
Board. Any other reservations? Any other no's?
No vote.
Okay, no for Kobayashi. Any other no votes? Okay, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. SB 3377 SD1 HD1 related to commercial activities on beaches. For this one, on page 1, line 5 and 15, the word persons should be changed to commercial vendor. And that's it. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair as amended.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 3377 SD1 HD1 with amendments noting the presence of all members. Any members voting with reservations or no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, SB 872 SD1 relating to the Commission on Water Resource Management. Yeah, on this one. The Chair's recommendation is that that new language on page 2, line 9 to 11 should read, excluding the ex-official members to exclude the chairperson of BLNR and the director of health and chairperson of the department and chairperson of Hawaiian Homes Commission and their designees from the qualification requirement. And to provide Department of Hawaiian Homelands a non-voting member on the board for continued discussion. Members, any questions or comments?
Sure.
Representative Ward.
So they're a full member, but they're non-voting. I think I'm going to quote Bill Isla saying this puts them kind of at the back of the bus, so to speak. If there's any department that we have in the state of Hawaii that needs water for its constituency, i.e. the thousands of people who we want to make farmers on the homesteads, but they don't have any water, I think they should be accommodated by at least having not only the seat, but also having the vote. For those reasons, Chair, I'm a no for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, any other questions or comments? Representative McKelvey.
Thank you, Chair. I just want, I guess my thing at this point, I'll be going with reservations. I can see, and I thank you for, moving this along the conference. I know there's a lot more discussion involved in it, but I think that there were situations where it's going to come to a head. And while I understand the other state agencies are managers of water, JHHL is a use entity. By having them in a position to vote, they could basically allow them to crystallize their concerns or objections to perhaps an application from the CWRM. So I'll be going with reservations for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair as amended.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 872 SD1 with amendments noting the reservations of Representative McKelvey and the no vote of Rep. Ward. Any other no's or reservations? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much, members. We are adjourned.